fawning deer.
Yes, well, it's been obviously with a bit of moisture recently, along with the increased temperatures, we've had quite a bit of growth around the place, and so it just raises a bit of a risk profile in regards to fawning issues with deer. It's a species we don't often talk about, so it's quite nice to have something different to talk about that's topical. So very exceptionally important when it comes to deer in monitoring feed intake and condition around this time, and they're a really difficult creature to get a good gauge on that, unless you've got a lot of experience, because they're an animal that if you start getting hands-on and interrupting the apple cart, so to speak, by over intervention, constantly bothering them in the paddocks, you can really put them off birthing issues and create problems in its own right, just by disrupting things too often. And so it's exceptionally important to get a good gauge on feed requirements and intake through the late pregnancy period, and that's for two reasons really, Rob. One is it's very easy to, especially in first fawners, and especially when we've got hybrid fawns, so perhaps we've got a Wapiti sire over red deer to get a first cross hybrid fawn. It's very, very easy to get fetal oversize. So a baby that's grown very rapidly in that last trimester of pregnancy, and perhaps a first fawning red. So, you know, I think most managers are much better these days at knowing what these animals can cope with, and for instance, a lot of people still go with a pure red sire over those younger animals.
And that's because of the fawn size?
That's because of the fawn size.
And what about fat?
Yes, so the other problem is, especially in the very later stages, perhaps things have been managed quite well through the latest stage of pregnancy, and then all of a sudden, perhaps like this year for instance, we get a massive flush of grass and we can end up laying a lot of intrapelvic fat down, which can create real issues in actually in birthing the animal, because obviously we've got all that extra space taken up around the birth canal with fat tissue, which can make it a little bit more difficult to get the baby out, particularly when we've got these animals that have been that have lived on flats, and they're quite unfit. They're a little bit less fit than hill-born stock, and so that in conjunction with extra fat can make things very difficult.
What fitness, is that another problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I've just mentioned, you get an overfat animal that seems to have lived its life on flatland, like we have here around the Canterbury Plains. Hill country stock seem to be a lot better and a lot more manageable to cope with these tighter births, so to speak. So that can be a big issue.
I mean, do people actually intervene when there's a birth problem? I mean, cattle and sheep I can understand, but deer?
Yeah, you have to sometimes for the welfare of the animal, and especially if you've got high value animals, and obviously if things get into trouble we need to intervene. But again, it's a skill that's developed over years of experience often with the species, and so often the best deer farmers will keep a standoff approach and actually monitor things with binoculars and things, and just get a gauge on the correct birthing behaviour and how long it's taking, and know how long things should take before they run them through the shed to help out. And unfortunately with deer this equates to maybe a higher number of lost births than normal, but as I've just mentioned, if you're constantly going in and disrupting the mob of calving hinds, we can end up with real disruption in the apple cart, and that can cause just as many problems with birth issues anyway. So actually just intervening when we need to. Unfortunately that equates to, with deer, sometimes things do tend to get left a little bit later than we'd like, but we can't win them all. But certainly you know, keeping a good eye on things and getting them through when they need to be helped. Of course we need the right facilities as well, which is another thing that people need to seriously consider when they go into breeding scenario with deer, is we really do need adequate crush facilities or handling facilities to help out, because if we can get these babies out without sedating the animal, just through good equipment and good facilities, it's better for everyone.
Nick, thank you very much, and a Merry Christmas to you, of course.